Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Bant Infect once again, and this time we are running up against Blue-White Spirits. This is our opening hand. It's generally fine, but there's no Infect guy, so we need to mulligan this away. This hand's not terribly good, but it does have an Inkmoth Nexus, so I think we're going to keep this, and Pendlehaven, so as long as our opponent doesn't have a way of killing the Nexus, we are in decent shape. Lead off with Pendlehaven into Hierarch. I like playing the Hierarch on turn 1 when possible. I don't know whether it's necessarily correct. Maybe we should lead off with the Inkmoth Nexus and try and get in a cheeky attack for 1, but I think I prefer just getting the mana available to us nice and early. And plays Mutavault into a Vial. So I was thinking they were probably Merfolk at this point. I haven't seen a lot of Spirit lists that run Mutavault, but then again I haven't seen a lot of Spirit lists in general recently because it hasn't been in a great place in the metagame. So here we're going to tap for 1, that's probably unnecessary, but do it anyway. And play out our Inkmoth, pass the turn back, and takes up their Vial. Plays a Flooded Strand and passes the turn. Draw a Waterlogged Grove. Which should be nice, we can cash that in potentially a little bit later. So we're going to lead off with attack and see what our opponent is working with. Obviously Spirits is not ideal for us. Ideally Inkmoth Nexus can get in fairly easily. We also missed a point of damage here. We should have... I think I auto-yielded to the Exalted trigger of Noble Hierarch, which is bad in this situation. We can Pendlehaven Inkmoth Nexus while it's a 1/1, and then obviously gain that pump before attacks. So that was certainly a misplay from us. One plays Rattle Chains, so we're going to have to Groundswell or Blossoming Defense to protect our guy here. Opponent has a Mausoleum Wanderer, which is fine, but yeah, that obviously cost us the misplay there. Should have Pendlehavened, and we would have been big enough to fend off the Rattle Chains. It plays a Breeding Pool, which is quite interesting. I'm not really sure what the green is for in their deck. Attackers for 3, which is fine. Interesting that they're going aggro on us, given the nature of our deck. I'm going to fetch a Breeding Pool, draw a Mutagenic Growth. So we spotted our error, so we're going to pump with the Pendlehaven first and then attack. See what our opponent has. See, it's not terribly likely they've got anything particularly good to do here in terms of blocking. I suppose they might just let us get 3 damage in, which is what happens. I could go for a kill here. We've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that enough? No, it's not quite enough, is it? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so we can get to 9 Infect here. But I don't think it's worth doing necessarily. Mausoleum Wanderer can be sacked to counter a spell, which I don't think we necessarily want to open ourselves up to. So I think we get 3 Infect in here, and then see what happens next turn. One takes up their Vials, plays a Hierarch, activates Mutavault, attacks for 3. It's fine. I'm not terribly unhappy that they're using up their mana, but obviously they do have the Vials in play. Draw a Blighted Agent, which might be a way to get through this particular scenario, but I think we're just going to lead off with the same play that we made last time. Let's see what our opponent does in response. I remember now the Breeding Pool is for Collected Company, which is a card our opponent has. So Deputy of Detention steals away our Hierarch, which is quite interesting. It's interesting that they didn't choose to try and get rid of the Inkmoth Nexus here, because I actually can't do anything about that. Although I suppose it does make sense in a sense that I could use Vines of Vastwood or something that would be favourable in that situation, but so we're just going to tap for green, and tap for 2 here, so our opponent's got a blocker. Seems unlikely that they've got 1 drop to Violin. And I crack my land here. I was a bit unsure about that because that actually makes Groundswell not very good if we don't find a land. But I think we want to add Blighted Agent to the battlefield as a way of potentially picking up the win and ignoring any chump blockers our opponent might have. Attacks with 2 with the Deputy, which is fine. Found Might of Old Corrosa. So I'm just going to go for the kill here. See if our opponent can do anything about it. Well, I mean, it's not lethal just yet, but I can Mutagenic Growth. So I'm going to cast Mutagenic Growth and see what our opponent does. So yeah, as I said, they do have Collected Company. There is some plays that might be able to save them here, possibly. But these aren't the cards that they were looking for. Mozzling Wanderer is potentially useful. It could potentially counter the Mutagenic Growth, but we have enough mana to actually deal with that and also cast Groundswell if we want. So yeah, our opponent concedes, not able to find the cards they wanted and unable to block the Blighted Agent. We're able to get through the last few points of Infect required, and we do manage to pick up a win in game 1. So, against Blue-White Spirits, as I said, the matchup seems generally problematic. Obviously, they've got flyers, which makes Inkmoth Nexus a lot less good in this matchup, and obviously generally they've just got blockers, quite a lot of blockers, so Glistener Elf isn't awfully good either. Giver of Runes seems like this is the kind of matchup that we really want Giver of Runes in. It can give protection, so allow our Infect guys to go through and block, or it can protect them from any blocks that have happened, and then we can Infect kill some spirits potentially. So yeah, this seems like the kind of matchup where Giver of Runes potentially could shine. In terms of other cards we want, I guess we want to bring in the Path to Exiles. We've seen that our opponent's running Deputy of Detention in the main, and which is presumably likely to stay around, and so we want a way to answer that and get back our guys where possible. Everything else, is there anything else that's terribly good? I suppose we could bring in Spellskite potentially as a fodder for Deputy of Detention, but that doesn't seem terribly good. We could bring in our Artifact Destruction to get rid of Vials, potentially. Yeah, I don't hate bringing Viridian Corruptor, and certainly cutting and bringing in the Path to Exiles. In terms of cards to cut, Spell Pierce seems like it wants to go. Distortion Strike seems like the kind of card we actually want. So maybe Rancor is the card to get rid of. Certainly one of the pump spells, or maybe even the Groundswell. I think we still want to be protecting our guys, but I suppose there's less removal around, so maybe bossing the defense isn't quite as important as it otherwise would be. Kind of a tough call, but we haven't really got a lot of cards that you want to bring in here, I don't think. As I say, Path and potentially the Corruptor, so we'll be cutting a few cards here and there, but nothing, no great changes. Okay, so here we are with game 2. This is our opening hand, which is pretty decent. I certainly like having Blighted Agent ready to go, and we've got a Hierarch and Glistener Elf to go along with those. Not a ton of pump spells, obviously, but this hand is decent. Got Scale Up, which is nice. I'm just going to run out the Glistener Elf here. See if we can get some damage in with that, depending on what our opponent does. Opponent plays Supreme Phantom. and swings into the 3 in the air, which we can't do anything about. Draw Inkmoth Nexus, which is nice. There was a bit of a difficulty here in deciding what the best thing to do was. So we can get Blighted Agent on the board here nice and early, and then potentially lead that into a scale-up double mutagenic growth kill, regardless of what our opponent puts on the board. I draw Inkmoth and I decide that instead I just want to play the Hierarch, but I don't know if that was a mistake in hindsight. We could potentially get a turn 3 kill off the Blighted Agent, so maybe I should have just ran out Blighted Agent. Because scale up plus double mutagenic growth is enough to kill the opponent, and they'd have to have an answer there and then. So I think in hindsight that was probably the better play. The reason I did this is so I can attack for 2, and then our opponent doesn't really have a favourable block here. If they do block, they end up shrinking their Supreme Phantom, but maybe that's not even that relevant. So I guess in hindsight maybe that was not a terribly good play, and maybe we should have just gone for the Blighted Agent. But attacks us for 3. I'm very conscious that our opponent's probably got Spell Queller. It certainly seems to be what they're representing, so I don't really want to play any spells here if I can avoid it. I'm going to attack for 2 and see what our opponent does. They don't do anything, so I'll just pass the turn on the assumption that they have the Spell Queller, which they do. Comes down here for no particular value, but obviously our opponent has increased the size of their board substantially, and we haven't really been able to do anything significant. So our opponent attacks 4, 5, 6. Opponent goes down to 6 here, and we're in a pretty tricky spot. Our opponent probably has Collected Company, given that he attacked into our Infect guys. So yeah, we're in a pretty tricky spot. This is where I think, had we played the Blighted Agent early, we might have been in a much better spot, because obviously blocking would have been irrelevant at that point. So I decided to attack, see how we get on, but as I say, our opponent does have the Collected Company. They find a Mausoleum Wanderer, which then triggers their other Mausoleum Wanderers, and that allows them to counter the mutagenic growth. And they can block it at any rate, if they wanted to. I think they've gone past blocking, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, unfortunately, we didn't quite manage to pick up the win there. As I say, potentially there was a line there that we could have won with. I think potentially that turn 2 play should have been the Blighted Agent, and we could have forced through the damage. Certainly seems like that would have ended up being the better play. But yeah, the Spell Queller really got us, and then unfortunately we weren't able to win out from there. So let's go on to game 3. Okay, so game 3, this is our opening hand. Seems pretty good. We've got the Glistener Elf and Inkmoth Nexus, Scale Up, Giver of Runes, and Mutagenic Growth. So it seems to have most of the cards we would want. I suppose we don't have white mana to make Giver of Runes, but I don't think that's desperately urgent, given that we've got some Infect guys to go, and our turn 1 play certainly wants to be Glistener Elf if possible. Opponent paths us. We don't have any basics in this deck as made by its creator, so yeah, I don't really particularly like that, given that Path to Exile is likely to be a thing that we encounter. I don't know if we can fit a basic land in here somewhere. Draw Temple Garden. I think we just want to run out Inkmoth, potentially. Went for the Giver of Runes. I suppose that makes sure that our Inkmoth is going to be protected. I'll place Thalia, which is fine, if somewhat annoying. It certainly makes a fast kill harder. Get a second Scale Up, which is not terribly good. This is kind of where Scale Up is a little bit irritating and less good. It's obviously less good in multiples. You don't really want to have 2 scale-ups. You'd rather get your 1 big attack in, and therefore a pump spell would have been nicer than a 2nd scale-up in this circumstance, because you can't double up on scale-up. It just turns the power and toughness to a 6/4. So playing it twice on the same creature doesn't do anything. One plays a Vial after playing Thalia, which kind of constrains their own mana, which is interesting. Opponent attacks here, which is just wrong, for reasons that you'll see. So they're tapped out, so I can just activate my Inkmoth Nexus, give it protection from white, and block here, putting a -1/-1 counter on it, and then Thalia will die once the Exalted ability comes off. So yeah, they just kill their own Thalia for no reason there, which is kind of interesting. It also taps out. So yeah, unfortunately we're not in lethal range, which is frustrating, because it feels like we should be able to win here, but we actually aren't able to. So we can get them in for 8 potentially. It turns out we do. So yeah, we've got our opponent down to 8 Infect. So we just need 2 more points of damage. Put Collected Companies, Deputy Detention, and Drog Skull Captain. Which is kind of frustrating because we are in a slightly awkward spot. We don't have ways to pump our Inkmoth Nexus. Not good ways anyway. We can scale it up 1 time, but that's only going to deal with this Drog Skull Captain, and then we have to sort of see what happens from our opponent. So decided to just attack in here rather than waste our scale up. We've got another Inkmoth waiting in the wings, and we can just trade here. Maybe that's the wrong play. I think it's fine. I think we're going to have to trade off an Inkmoth at some point. Opponent plays the Hierarch, attacks us for 3 with the Deputy, which is fine. I think we're going to draw a card off our Waterlogged Grove at end of turn. That draws us a Temple Garden, which isn't terribly exciting. We do draw a Rancor, which is quite interesting. So obviously our opponent can present blockers, but then we can still trample through potentially. So we're going to play Temple Garden. I'm going to activate the Inkmoth Nexus. Look to see if we can Rancor here. But it has Spell Queller. So I'm going to scale up, attack for 6, and then at the very least we're forcing our opponent to block with the Spell Queller, presumably. And then we'll get our Rancor back. But yeah, things have become trickier than we would have liked. We're not in the best of spots. We're on 9 life. It just kind of depends on whether our opponent runs out of gas or not. But certainly a Collected Company or anything out like that would put us in a pretty bad spot. Drug Skull Captain. So yeah, we don't really have a good attack here. We actually need to get 2 points of Infect in, not 1. So Rancoring up this Inkmoth Nexus isn't terribly good. But it has another Spell Queller as well, so we actually just don't have a good attack here. And yeah, we're in really bad shape. I think can attack us for 6, so we potentially dead. We can chump with the Hierarch to stay alive. And I suppose Path to Exile might have won us the game. No, we still need to do 2 points of damage. So yeah, unfortunately we're not able to pick up the win here. I do go for the attack just in case our opponent decides not to block for any reason, but they do block, and that wraps it up. So yeah, quite a tight game. I feel like we should have won this game, but the cards didn't quite come together. Double scale up ended up being kind of punishing on us, as any other pump spell would have probably just won us the game on the spot when our opponent tapped out. So yeah, it didn't quite run our way, but it was close for a matchup that I think is generally probably pretty unfavourable. They've got a lot of blockers and ways to deal with our Infect guys, and lots of things that generally cause a few headaches, so it's quite tricky to win this matchup. They've got a lot of disruption and ways to deal with our stuff. So yeah, I would say generally Blue-White Spirits seems like a bad matchup for the Infect deck, and that's certainly how it played out here, unfortunately.